Since I was in my teens, I've had this fantasy of being a guy in a tie and shirt sleeves, maybe wearing a bowler hat and a chewed cigar butt, sitting at a drawing table, cranking out cartoons for some big city paper. So many of my drawing heroes fit this image. Instead, I'm a guy in sweatpants at a laptop sipping vegetable juice. But anyway, one of the essentials of all these guys was they would have a bottle of India ink and a dip pen. That I could do. This wasn't just a bit of a hipster anachronism like waxing my mustache or making artisanal pickles. I love the work of so many artists who made gorgeous black lines long before the dawn of iPads and technical markers. Heinrich Clay, Ronald Searle, Aubrey Beardsley. And I wanted to see if I could make black expressive lines like they had. So I went to my local Blick art store and I discovered frankly, very few options. Basically, I could buy a speedball set of nibs with a cheap plastic handle. Most of the nibs were designed for calligraphy, and they were just a drag to draw with, pun intended. I began to worry that dip pens, like 5-cent stogies and get me rewrite, might just be a thing of the past. And then a friend told me about a holiday sale at the Society of Scribes, which is an organization for calligraphers, and I discovered a vast world of options. Too many options. Turns out that there's still a number of nib manufacturers, as well as a booming market for antique nibs. And I dove into the deep end. I tried lots of different nibs along the way, but I always had the feeling that I was out of my depth. I'm not a calligrapher, and the examples that I saw of how people use them all seemed to come from that world of calligraphy. Now, my earliest experience with nibs was generally one of frustration. They jammed. They needed to be dipped over and over, and they left me with dirty hands and a page full of drips. And worst of all, the lines themselves felt kind of unpleasant. There was no smooth flow. The pens just wanted to balk and skip all over the page. I thought of those old guys at the drafting tables, and I decided I can't give up yet. Instead, I started to experiment, and I researched, and I made a few crucial discoveries. First, like with so many art supplies, you need the right paper. Dip pens work well on smooth, heavy paper like Bristol or hot press watercolor paper. Second, nibs come from the factory with some sort of oily coating to protect them from sticking to each other, and the coating needs to be removed first. Otherwise, they don't hold on to a quantity of ink. And without that coating, they get rusty. So always rinse and dry off your nibs when you're done working with them. Third, flexibility is a key variable that separates one type of nib from another. Each nib has a slot down the middle, and as you push down on the nib, the tines separate and they widen to let the ink flow from the reservoir. Some nibs are super stiff and the tines yield less to pressure, and that makes for extremely consistent but unresponsive lines. And others are super springy and bendy, like drawing with a leaf, and the tines slide apart. They make for an undulating and a brush-like feel. But it's harder to control, and the ink flows much faster, and there's lots of levels in between the super stiff and the super springy. Fourth, all of those slots and holes in the nib have a function. They are the reservoirs that hold different amounts of ink and also release them when the lines of the ink separate and widen the slot between them. All of which led me to the G nib. It's a nib designed for manga artists. Those are Japanese graphic novels and comics, that is used for both lettering and drawing. The G-nib is fairly flexible, and the G design of the shoulder holds a surprising amount of ink without dripping onto the page. I've used G-nibs for years, but it's a great pen for beginners. It's springy enough to dissuade you from pushing down hard or scraping at the paper like you're drawing with a nail, and that keeps the lines under control. It doesn't cut up the paper into little particles that jam up the nib and cause it to skitter. And it's expressive, it's responsive. They're also super affordable. A pack of 10 nibs costs under $10. That means you don't think twice about popping a fresh one in if the metal becomes too stressed or brittle with use, or it just gets too gunked up. Even though I use them all the time, a box will easily last me a year. There are several manufacturers of G-nibs, but I use Zebras, but I've also been fine with nibs from Tachikawa and Nikko. I like the number 127 handles made by Kohinoor, but there's lots of Japanese options. Just don't get one made out of plastic. Wood and cork are the nicest to use. For $25 or so, you can get yourself a box of G-nibs and a handle and a bottle of ink and some Bristol paper. And if you want to know more about dip pens, I made an online course that's called Dip into Dip Pens. It's available at my website, Sketchbook Skool. And if you get onto our mailing list, you'll get a discount and you can jump right in. And who knows, maybe you'll become one of those guys with their hat at the back of their head drawing a daily cartoon strip. Cigars are optional.